The sun was setting behind the rugged hills as Emily Carter wiped the dust from her brow. The excavation had been grueling, and yet she was filled with a strange anticipation she couldn't quite place. The site was unlike any she had explored before, a forgotten ruin hidden deep within the mountains, rich with artifacts from a lost civilization. The atmosphere felt thick with history, as though the stones themselves had stories they were waiting to tell. Emily moved carefully through the rubble, her fingers tracing the rough edges of ancient stone. She had spent years chasing forgotten histories, but this site had something different, something special. As she knelt to examine a particularly intriguing artifact, her eyes caught a glimmer of something buried deeper beneath the dirt. Curiosity piqued. She began to dig, slowly uncovering an object wrapped in brittle, decaying cloth. Gently, Emily pulled the object free, revealing an old, sealed letter. The paper was yellowed and delicate, but still intact. The seal was made of wax, intricately stamped with a symbol she didn't recognize. Heart pounding with the excitement of discovery, she carefully opened the letter, handling it as though it might dissolve in her hands. The handwriting inside was elegant, the ink slightly faded but still legible. As she read the words, her breath caught in her throat. The letter spoke of love, a love so powerful it defied the boundaries of time. The writer, Edmund Wells, described his longing for a woman he felt he knew across centuries. Emily's eyes widened as she reached the final lines, where Edmund described a woman who matched her own likeness, down to the smallest detail. She froze, a shiver running down her spine. How could this be? Emily sat alone in her tent, the letter spread out on the table in front of her, the soft glow of a lantern flickering over the words. Her mind raced as she reread the letter, each line pulling her deeper into the mystery. Who was Edmund Wells, and how could he have written about her so vividly, nearly 200 years ago? Unable to shake the feeling that this discovery was more than just coincidence, she turned to the tools she trusted most: research and logic. She spent hours combing through historical databases on her laptop, searching for any trace of Edmund. His name surfaced in a few places. A scholar, a man of great intellect in the early 1800s. He had been involved in studies of ancient civilizations, much like her, but the records became fragmented after a certain point. And then he simply vanished, leaving behind no further details of his life. Emily's curiosity quickly grew into obsession. She contacted experts in ancient languages, reached out to historians, even reviewed local folklore about the ruins. There were whispers of strange occurrences tied to the site, legends of love, time, and lost souls. The deeper she delved, the more she felt the pull of Edmund's words. And then the dreams began. At first, they were fleeting, images of a man's face she had never seen before, but somehow knew was Edmund. Each night, the dreams grew more vivid. She found herself walking through cobblestone streets, the air thick with the smell of burning wood, and the distant chatter of an era long past. In the dreams, she was never quite herself, but always close to him, always separated by some invisible barrier. When she awoke, the sense of connection lingered. The dreams felt more like memories than fantasies, as if she were recalling a life she had never lived. Unable to ignore the growing connection between her and the mysterious Edmund, Emily resolved to dig deeper, certain now that this letter was not just a historical artifact. It was the key to something much larger, something that was beginning to blur the line between past and present. Emily's dreams were no longer just disjointed flashes of another time. They were becoming increasingly clear, vivid, and real. Every night, she found herself walking through the same streets, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin, hearing Edmund's voice calling out to her from just beyond her reach. It was as if some unseen force was pulling her toward him. During one particularly restless night, Emily woke with a start, her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the feeling that the answers she was searching for were tied not just to the past, but to something far stranger. She decided to revisit the local legends she had heard whispered about the ruins. Folk tales of love across time, of souls bound by fate, and of mysterious forces that bridge the gap between worlds. As she explored further, a particular story caught her attention. The villagers believed that the ancient civilization who had built the ruins practiced rituals that allowed them to transcend time. According to the legend, once every few centuries, during a rare celestial event, the barrier between the past and present weakened, allowing the chosen few to connect with their lost loves across time. Emily's pulse quickened as she read about the celestial event. It was a rare alignment of stars, something that hadn't occurred for over 200 years, and it was due to happen in just a few days. She felt a deep certainty that this event wasn't a coincidence. It was tied to her discovery of the letter, to her dreams, and to Edmund. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Was it really possible? Could this ancient civilization have unlocked the key to bending time? And if so, could she find a way to reach Edmund? Her decision was made. She would be at the ruins on the night of the celestial event. The night of the celestial event arrived, and the air was thick with tension. Emily stood at the entrance of the ruins, the ancient letter clutched tightly in her hand. She could feel the weight of the night pressing down on her. Something about this moment felt like destiny. The sky was clear, the stars beginning to align just as the legend had foretold. Her breath came in shallow bursts as she stepped into the heart of the ruins. The stones, worn by centuries, glowed faintly in the starlight, as though the place itself was alive with the energy of the universe. Emily glanced up, her eyes following the path of the stars as they slowly inched into perfect alignment. She felt her pulse quicken, every fiber of her being alert to the shift in the atmosphere. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet seemed to hum with energy. A low, vibrating sound filled the air, and the temperature dropped sharply. Emily looked around, her heart racing. The air shimmered, as if reality itself were bending. A gust of wind swept through the ruins, sending a cloud of dust swirling around her, and then silence. When Emily opened her eyes, everything had changed. The ruins were gone, replaced by a bustling village from a time long past. She stood on a cobblestone street, the smell of wood smoke and freshly baked bread filling her lungs. For a moment, she was disoriented, struggling to understand what had happened. But then she saw him, Edmund. He was standing just a few feet away, his back turned toward her as he gazed up at the sky. The sight of him, tall, handsome, dressed in the simple yet elegant attire of the 19th century, sent a jolt of recognition through her. She took a step forward, her voice trembling as she whispered his name. Edmund. He turned slowly, his eyes widening in disbelief. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, staring at one another, the weight of centuries falling away. Then, without a word, Edmund closed the distance between them, his arms wrapping around her in a fierce embrace. It was as if they had known each other their entire lives. "You found me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I knew you would come." Emily could only nod, her heart too full for words. Somehow, impossibly, they had been given this moment, and though they both sensed it could not last, they held on to each other, desperate to make the most of the time they had. The world around them seemed to blur as Emily and Edmund clung to each other, the reality of their impossible reunion sinking in. Time felt both endless and fleeting, the moments slipping away even as they tried to hold them still. They walked through the village together, their fingers intertwined, speaking in hushed tones as if too much sound might shatter the fragile magic that had brought them together. "How is this possible?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand any of it." Edmund's eyes were filled with a mixture of wonder and sadness. "Neither do I, but I've dreamed of you for so long. I knew you existed somewhere, across time, beyond reason. And now here you are." They wandered through the streets, the village alive with the sounds of a world from another century. Horses clattered along the cobblestones, and lanterns flickered in the windows of small, humble homes. It all felt so real, yet Emily knew it couldn't last. "Why can't we stay?" she asked, her heart aching with the weight of what she knew was coming. "There are rules even love cannot break," Edmund said, his voice heavy with resignation. This is a gift, a moment outside of time. But we do not belong here, not together. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as they stood before the house where Edmund had once lived, its windows dark, its door closed as though it had been waiting for centuries. What will happen when I leave? Edmund reached into his pocket and pulled out a small artifact, a pendant, ancient and worn. He placed it gently into her hand. You will take this with you, as proof that we were real, and I will live on in your heart, as you will in mine. The moment began to slip away, like a fading dream. The village around them seemed to waver, the edges blurring as time started to reclaim what it had lent. Emily held the pendant tightly, feeling its weight, trying to anchor herself in the present with Edmund for just a few moments longer. She memorized the way he looked at her, the way his hand fit perfectly into hers. I don't want to go, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Edmund's smile was sad but full of understanding. I know, but you must. Our time together was never meant to last. As if in response to his words, the world around her began to dissolve. The cobblestones under her feet turned to dust. The warmth of his hand faded from her grasp, and Emily felt herself pulled backward, as though she were being swept up by an invisible tide. Edmund's face was the last thing she saw before everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the ruins. The cold night air bit at her skin, and the stars had shifted in the sky. For a moment, she lay there, the sensation of Edmund's touch still lingering on her skin, the memories of their time together vivid and aching. She opened her hand, and there it was, the pendant, proof that it had all been real. Emily sat up, her heart full yet broken, knowing that while their time had passed, their love would endure. In the days that followed, Emily found herself returning to the ruins, not to uncover more artifacts, but to reflect. The pendant stayed close to her, a constant reminder that some things transcend time and space. Her heart ached for Edmund, but she no longer felt the emptiness she once had. As she gazed up at the stars, Emily understood the truth. Love isn't bound by the rules of the world. It leaves a mark, not on the body, but on the soul. She had experienced a love that would last forever, even if they couldn't. Thanks for tuning in. If you love this emotional story and want more captivating ones with unexpected twists, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you'll always know when a new story drops. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. We can't wait to hear what you think. See you in the next story.